to Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. I'm your host, Lasheena Williams, and so excited to be here with you all and kicking off the conversation for this month, which is building stronger nonprofit networks. Before we get started with our guests today, I just want to give you a few reminders. If you missed any of our past lives, don't forget to check out the guide section of the group. And if you want to know what lives are coming up, make sure you check out the events section of the group. So let's go ahead and get started in today's conversation. I have Josh Groll from Taproot with us, so I'm going to bring him on up. Hello, Josh.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking this time and speaking with us, especially on our topic of building stronger nonprofit networks. I'm excited for our conversation, but before we dive into this conversation, we'd like to get to know you a little bit more. So, if you don't mind talking a little bit about how you got into the nonprofit arena and where you are today.
Yeah. I really entered the world of nonprofits when I started working here at Taproot. I actually cut my professional teeth on volunteer management in kind of the museum space, which
Mm-hmm.
is a little niche. But that's actually kind of where I got started when I lived in Washington D.C., obviously a big city for museums.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I found out about the Taproot Foundation through a fellowship program I entered, which is called the New Sector Alliance. And I believe they're still out there, the New
Mm-hmm.
Sector Alliance. And New Sector operates, or at that time, kind of operated like Teach for America for nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
So you are matched with, for the fellowship, you're matched with a host nonprofit that you work with. And Taproot Foundation happened to be my host nonprofit
Oh.
through that fellowship program. And it's a great fellowship program because it helps build infrastructure at nonprofits. And I got started with Taproot when I lived in Chicago for the fellowship of the New Sector Alliance. So that's really how I entered the world of nonprofits kind of in earnest. I guess
Mm-hmm.
museums are run off of a nonprofit model as well. Then I kind of pivoted into this more capacity building type of role with my host nonprofit Taproot. And then after my fellowship was up, I stayed on working with Taproot in various capacities. Um, so they kind of roped me in through the fellowship, and then I never left the this space basically after that fellowship. And
Lovely.
yeah, since then I've had the pleasure of working with the New Sector Alliance
Mm-hmm.
as New Sector Alliance being a beneficiary
Okay.
of Taproot. So
Mm-hmm.
they seeded the field with nonprofit professionals, and then those nonprofit professionals come back and help them build capacity as well. Since New Sector Alliance has also worked with Taproot as a beneficiary.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell us about Taproot and what your role there.
Yeah, so Taproot, broadly speaking, is an organization that is dedicated to empowering mission driven organizations by mobilizing skilled volunteers to advance resource equity. So that's a kind of a lot of fancy words. But really, what that means is um, Taproot debuted, in the early 2000s, and the entire goal of Taproot is to act as an intermediary, a bridge. So our name Taproot, reflects this. The taproot is the root of a plant that actually connects systems of other
Mm,
roots to each other. Um, so there's like
wow.
a lot of famous root vegetables, carrots, turnips, etc., that use taproots, and that is a great and powerful metaphor for what it is that we actually do. So we connect the world of business professionals and consulting
Mhm.
to the world of nonprofits through pro bono engagement. So pro bono is obviously a phrase that is most associated with kind of the legal field,
Mhm.
or more familiar with it there. But really, you can do pro bono anything, right? You could do pro bono plumbing, pro bono architecture, and we wanted to instill a pro bono ethic in the world of professional services, in the world of consulting. So everything from marketing communications to business strategy and finance, information technology, and HR and leadership development. So a lot of people don't necessarily consider that you can offer pro bono services in
Mhm.
those areas as well, but you can, just like lawyers do. And pretty much all of Taproot's programming over the years we've been around is dedicated to fostering those connections between people with those types of skill sets that want to give back to mission driven organizations. So an opportunity for if you're an accountant, or maybe you're a social media marketer, or maybe you're an expert on HR recruitment, you can take your skill set and donate it to a nonprofit organization that is maybe some kind of organization that works in an issue area that's near and dear to your heart,
Mhm.
or something you really care about, or maybe you're trying to look to flex your skills in a different environment. There's all sorts of reasons to do pro bono from a volunteer perspective, but in a nutshell, that's really what Taproot does. And like I said, over the years, all our programming has been dedicated to achieving that goal.
So this month's theme of building stronger nonprofit networks is it's all in you all's wheelhouse,
Right.
because you do a lot of building those connections. So what tips would you have for organizations around building a stronger network for their organization?
Yeah, something I love to talk about when it comes to nonprofits building networks is, we're we understand like fundraising is really important.
Mhm.
Obviously for nonprofits, I like to try and expand that idea to resource raising,
Mhm.
as fundraising being a part of your resource raising. And when it comes to like building community, um I think that is or when you're thinking about resource raising and building a community, um, pro bono opportunities allow you, in many cases, to get a foot in the door
Mhm.
when it comes to expanding your own network. So what we have seen when we do our work is, maybe a nonprofit teams up with a skilled volunteer to work on some kind of project together, um, but what they find is, pro bono ends up being an evergreen resource.
Mhm.
So this person comes in, and now all of a sudden the nonprofit has a foot in the door with someone who might have a lot of other professional connections,
Mhm. Mhm.
in their own network. We've had, people join nonprofit projects, and then they maybe loop in coworkers or other people in their network that are potentially interested in this nonprofit or helping a nonprofit like this. So what we found is that pro bono opportunities have a lot of spin-off effects.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, in a lot of cases, a nonprofit might find a skilled volunteer that's working on them with a certain project, but they realize, hey, this person has connections kind of in a larger professional field. We might float other needs that we have to this person that they might not necessarily have this skill set to assist with, but they might know people in their network,
Mhm.
that they go, oh, there's other people that work at my company or something like that who
Mhm.
actually could help you with that issue. We've also found that skilled volunteers, if they really get into an organization and they really love an organization, will actually stay on.
Mhm.
So we've heard a ton of stories about pro bono opportunities turning into board positions.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way in which nonprofits can really expand their network beyond just the project you might be working on with a skilled volunteer. We've had many stories of skilled volunteers who are decide to stay on with the organization, and they go, hey, they realized that they could use a lot of my skill set on their board while they're growing their board out. Maybe I'm a technology volunteer, and they realize, this is an empty space we have on our board. And a lot of organizations that are just starting out and building their presence and their board presence in particular make use of pro bono. And so that's just another way in which
Mm-hmm.
the network expands. Is pro bono service oftentimes turns into um, volunteers who stay with the organization, either kind of in a advisory capacity or as board positions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then, every volunteer you engage with, they have a larger network
Mm-hmm.
that you can also tap into. So it's kind of like if you see like a web, again, or that metaphor of the taproot, bringing
Yeah.
bringing people together. One person might give you access to a lot of other communities that person might be involved in, professional associations and things like that, along with board service. So my big tip would be for nonprofits to think about doing pro bono engagements with skilled volunteers, because
Mm-hmm.
you never know, that person might stay on as a board member or have access to other resources beyond what their own skill set are. Like I said, they have friends and colleagues that might have
Mm-hmm.
other skilled volunteer resources. They get excited about pro bono opportunities. They talk to their coworkers, they talk to their colleagues. um, they can also become Pro bono volunteers can become great evangelists on behalf of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if they do become a board member, but also just like in their own professional networks and places like that. If they feel very passionate about your organization, they can keep your name and your mission and what you do kind of in those networks. Keep kind of the buzz alive that you always want to have around your nonprofit organization.
I love all of that. And I'm just thinking about, so last year, our organization participated in I can't remember the name, but it was a 2 day, almost like a thon. I don't remember
Mm,
where pretty much. We had pro bono volunteers from Taproot um, join us, and we worked on one of our marketing strategies for one of our particular programs. And it was really good because, one, it allowed those volunteers and to really get connected to our mission, what we do and how we do it. Because like the first half of the day was them really getting to know us. So that was, like a good thing that came out of it, which led to those advocates that you talked about, those champions that are able to kind of go out and talk about what we do and how we do it. In addition, what ended up happening is they even connected us to their employee giving program when we were done
mm,
with the experience. So that's an invite only program. So that was one of those things we weren't really, it was came in as a pro bono project, but like you said, it grew into much more than
right.
that. Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean those are the stories we love to hear. Because like I said, once you link up with a skilled volunteer, you're also linking up with their entire network, basically.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you never know, what else they'll be able to bring in for your organization when you're raising those resources.
Hmm.
We like to talk to nonprofits about making pro bono kind of a part of their larger strategic plan. Um,
Hmm.
so setting some kind of goal for the acquisition of pro bono resources every year.
Hmm.
Um, but we call it being powered by pro bono. Um, we actually have a whole textbook that we published called Powered by Pro Bono.
What? I gotta check that
Yeah, that's
out.
all about you know giving all the information nonprofits need to empower their own like seeking of pro bono resources and kind
Hmm.
of maximizing on those pro bono resources. So when an organization is powered by pro bono, it means that pro bono is just integrated into their kind of larger strategic model. They're
Mhm.
saying, we're going to bring in this, we're going to get this dollar amount in pro bono services this year.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a great way to demonstrate to other partners and sponsors and people in your network that your organization is really frugal but also really agile. We're
Mhm.
saving money by getting the services of consultants, on a pro bono basis.
Mhm.
And I like that you brought up, something I wanted to touch on is Taproot. We are a nonprofit as well,
Mhm.
and we have different kind of arms and wings of our organization. Um, so really, kind of the two main wings of our organization are our advisory services practice,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what you were talking about.
Mhm.
So our advisory services practice is almost like an in-house consultancy, which allows us to engage with business partners in special events that we run for nonprofits to get them in touch with skilled volunteers. So things like scope-a-thons,
Mhm.
pro bono marathons, where a nonprofit is getting into a room either in real life or virtually.
Mhm.
We do both. Where they have maybe a challenge, and for the entire kind of pro bono marathon lasts the whole day, and they're matched with skilled volunteers, with one of our partners, and the skill volunteers help the nonprofit tackle their challenge kind of in that 1 day pro bono
Mhm.
marathon. That's just an example of one of the types of events. We have
Mhm.
more that we offer that get nonprofits in touch with skilled volunteers.
Mhm.
But we also have a very big online presence through an online marketplace we debuted in 2014 called Taproot Plus.
Mhm.
um, and that's actually what I mostly do here at
Mhm.
Taproot. So my
Mhm.
official title here at Taproot is nonprofit success coach,
Mhm.
and I work on our Taproot Plus team. And really, Taproot Plus is, I mean, it works on a similar basis to other matchmaking services that exist
Mhm.
out there on the web. When it debuted, we kind of jokingly were like, "Oh, this is like a dating site for skilled volunteers, those pro bono
Mhm.
consultants, and nonprofits." And what we really wanted to create was a marketplace that empowered nonprofits and skilled volunteers to make
Mhm.
connections themselves.
Mhm.
If I'm a skill volunteer, let's say I'm, an accountant or something like that, and I want to give back my services on a pro bono basis, I could create an account on Taproot Plus, and kind of select my skill profile.
Mhm.
And then once I have that account, I could go on the marketplace and see what types of opportunities are available from nonprofits
Mhm.
that match my kind of special skill set. And if I was maybe interested, maybe I was looking at the project description and their mission, and I was like, oh yeah, this aligns with stuff I'm really interested in, or this is a mission that's really near and dear to my heart.
Mhm.
And I think I could help this nonprofit. Taproot Plus empowers a skill volunteer to reach out to them, and say, "Hey, I saw your project. Let's talk about potentially partnering together because I think my skill set could really help your organization." So, in a broad way, that's kind of how Taproot Plus works.
Mhm.
And from the nonprofit side, nonprofits can jump in and create an account as well and start posting opportunities for things they might need assistance with. So it is kind of a way in which we saw that our programming um, was, our programming was, reaching a certain amount of people, but we wanted to reach even more people.
Mhm.
And so we were like, let's set up this virtual marketplace where we can inspire kind of like a DIY ethic and
Mhm.
start getting, people in contact with each other, because that's something we were hearing is, we would love for there to be opportunities outside of the events that Taproot normally does, where skilled volunteers and nonprofits could get together. So we were like, let's make a space where we can kind of empower people to start just getting in touch with each other on their own to do pro bono engagements.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, like I said, that debuted. I can't believe it's almost been 10 years, but 2014.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and what we found in like the first year or two of Taproot Plus running, we
Mm-hmm.
had reached more nonprofits than we had reached in like the past 10 years of Taproot existing.
Wow.
Yeah, so when we entered that virtual space,
Yeah.
all of a sudden geographic boundaries that had kind of defined our organization for a long time were just kind of knocked down almost overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Because Taproot, we worked primarily in the cities that we had a kind of a market base, a presence
Okay.
in larger metropolitan areas
Mm-hmm.
where we were delivering programs. And once we entered that virtual space, the geographic barriers just got totally knocked down. So that was really, really exciting for us because we were able to just broaden the scope and reach of what our organization does through Taproot Plus.
So, can you give us some examples of projects? If I was a nonprofit organization, I'm looking to build capacity. I'm like, oh my gosh, where I'm going to go? I'm listening to this live. I'm like, oh, I could go to Taproot. What are some examples of those projects that you've seen come across for Taproot Plus?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned earlier kind of the larger skills categories that we kind of
Mm-hmm.
specialize in.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say them again. So if anyone is listening, they kind of know what our main focus is. So really we facilitate projects in the marketing communications area, the HR leadership development area, information technology area, and business strategy and finance.
Okay.
So, broadly speaking, if a nonprofit had needs that could fall under any of those categories, they would be good candidates for pro bono support through the Taproot Plus marketplace.
Okay.
So, for example, like maybe my organization, maybe we're a younger organization and we're going to do our first annual report.
Mm-hmm.
Always really exciting. But when you're looking at how you're going to do this annual report, maybe it's a younger organization with a smaller staff and they have no in-house graphic design assistants available.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that a lot of nonprofits face is,
Mm-hmm.
they're just starting out and they're like, I don't know how to use Canva. I'm not a graphic designer, but we know we need branding and things like that really pop. Um, you could take that need to the Taproot Plus marketplace and say, hey, we're doing our first ever annual report. We want to partner with a graphic designer who can come in and use maybe, we have a logo and a color palette that
Mm-hmm.
we've decided on, and we'd love to partner with a graphic designer to just help us design the layout of this annual report, the graphic elements of it.
Mm-hmm.
um, that's just a specific example of the type of need you could potentially bring to Taproot Plus. So we usually recommend to nonprofits, focus the project needs you have around kind of one skill set.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then you can tackle even larger initiatives using that type of discrete assistance. So with
Mm-hmm.
that example that I was providing of the annual report, um, you might also go, you know what, we would really also need the help of like a copywriter or copy editor
Mm-hmm.
to refine our messaging for this
Mm-hmm.
annual report. So you could bring that to the marketplace as well, and say, we want to work with a copywriter to make sure our storytelling in this annual report really like reaches the audiences we want it to. So we have a graphic designer who's helping with that element. Now we also have someone who is an expert in communications and copy editing who's actually helping us craft the storytelling elements. So you see here, there's more than one project kind of working together to
Mm-hmm.
create that larger kind of initiative the nonprofit is going for, that print ready annual report.
Yeah.
Um, so that's an example of like multiple different projects kind of working together to kind of help contribute to a larger goal that the nonprofit might have. We see that also with more popular types of needs like website design and development,
Mhm.
in that IT space. But in terms of like business strategy and finance, everything from accounting to things that are maybe more strategic, like, hey,
Mhm.
help us map out an earned income strategy.
Mhm.
Or we have merchandise and we want to open an online store.
Mhm.
How would we There's a technical aspect to that, but then there's like a marketing aspect to that. You could get pro bono assistance for any one of those aspects or all of
Mhm.
them. Yeah, so there's in those four kind of broad skill categories, there's all
Mhm.
sorts of stuff you could do. The stuff I mentioned is really popular, but things like search engine optimization are always very
Mhm.
popular. In terms of like fundraising in particular and community support,
Mhm.
a lot of nonprofits get help when it comes time to set up their own CRMs.
Mhm.
So we're thinking Razor's Edge, Salesforce, things like that have become really, really, really important to nonprofits.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know this from personal experience. If I'm trying to set up a CRM for the first time, it's very easy to get overwhelmed.
Mhm.
If you never opened up that Salesforce dashboard for the first time, it might be like, I have no idea what I'm doing in here.
Yep.
That's a perfect opportunity to get someone who's a Salesforce expert who can come in and help, as a pro bono project, help
Mhm.
us set up our Salesforce presence, help us figure out where to begin, like what are the things that we really need to hammer out. That's a perfect example of something you could get help from a skill volunteer with. So CRM stuff is always very popular, especially now because that's becoming really critical for nonprofits, for their fundraising efforts, but also
Mhm.
for that community building aspect. Yeah, so there's just like the world's your oyster. Like there's all sorts of
Yes.
directions you could go. I could just keep giving you examples, but we'd be here forever.
Love it. So tell us how those viewing can sign up for Taproot Plus, stay connected. So what's the best way for them to sign up and follow Taproot?
Yeah, so right now we have kind of two websites.
Hmm.
In the future, like spoilers, we are going to be marrying those websites
Okay.
together. So there'll
Hmm.
be one presence. But there's Taproot Plus, which is kind
Hmm.
of the dedicated online marketplace. So that's taprootplus.org.
Okay.
Um, and then if you want to find out more about Taproot as an organization, like I said, we have multiple wings. We have our Taproot
Hmm.
Plus side of things, and then we have our advisory services. Um, you could find us at taprootfoundation.org,
Okay.
which is kind of our larger foundation page. So taprootfoundation.org and then taprootplus.org are the main places you can go to. We have a newsletter you can sign up for on taprootfoundation.org. If you do create a Taproot Plus account, we'll also ask you during that process, hey, do you want to be signed up for our newsletter?
Okay.
So really, either way you want to go, you'll end up, getting asked if you want to sign up for our newsletter, and that's the best way to get kind of keep in the loop with like
Hmm.
what we're doing. And if we have special events or programs that you might be eligible for as a nonprofit in particular,
Hmm.
we'll talk about those in our newsletter and keep you posted there. But signing up for Taproot Plus kind of also gets you in the door in terms of if we have those things like speed consulting events or pro bono marathons or things like that, and your organization might be eligible for one of those,
Hmm.
um, will actually, once you get in the Taproot Plus system, uh, will find you if you're eligible for one of those, and you might get an email from us saying, hey, we have this event coming up, your organization might be eligible, take a look, like the event that you all participated in.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so once you sign up there, you're kind of locked in and will be kind of in our larger network as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for
Yeah.
hanging with us today and sharing information about Taproot, along with how we could build stronger networks through pro bono projects. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. And thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. And we'll see you on the next Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.